Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Kristin and Interior Design. We are back with Kristin Bergunder, excited to talk more about the work she does. And we're here again to talk more about the interior design, but also the fact that she's a realtor. So she's got a double whammy here, and she's really unique in that aspect. It's Kristin and interiordesign.com. You can find her there on the website, spelled Kristinann, Interior Design. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Doing good. It is, we have extreme winter weather here in Indianapolis. It has been, yes, freezing.
Any snow?
My husband just said yesterday, he's like, my body's not adjusted. I'm not ready for this yet.
Okay.
So, did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Yes, great Thanksgiving. I stood home and I organized and I put Halloween stuff away. I did, or honestly, and then my dad came over, but I donated 30 bags of children's clothes. We went to the shelter in the morning.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
Yeah, and then I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to work in my home and work on my clutter, and I felt good. So that's what I did.
Good.
What about you?
I bet you that's like a huge weight lifted, right?
It really is. Yes. Was yours more of a family type gathering, food feast?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we hosted, like you, I think Friday I don't think I got out of stretchy pants, just like, comfortable. And then we did, Christmas decorating and, stuff like that over. And so, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we're excited to have you back here. And for today, just want to point out, is that your kitchen behind you?
Yes.
Beautiful. I like that. You call that subway tile? Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I love it. The first thing I noticed when you signed on today. Well, clearly that's what she does, right? I know today you want to talk about those that may be building a new home, right? What to be aware of during the phase and pricing of your home. Do you want to get started on that?
Sure. Yes, I toggle, I wear both hats. I am a real estate agent as well as an interior designer. So, when it comes to having, I guess, a little bit of a perk with my clients, whether it's from the design side or from the real estate side, something that I think is incredibly unique is that I do have the ability to look at it from both sides of the table, if you will. And so a lot of times what I try to explain to people during the building process, for one, that is a service that I do offer within my company, is being able to sit down with people, going through drawings, and kind of just walking and talking through the function, and then working from there to the fun stuff into the design part of it. With my real estate clients, though, the mass majority of them, we're production build. Most of them, I'd say about 75% of them. And then, the other 25% might be semi to custom build. And I think a misconception that I have ran across numerous times when it comes to the general public is like, how does that work? Probably the biggest thing is that when people drive by a sign, for example, and, they see that builder that's got a wonderful price that's displayed, and then they get all excited thinking, okay, well, this is what, the price of the home is going to cost. And then they sit down with that particular builder. And, once we go through the fine print, they kind of, begin to realize after walking through the beautiful showroom that the mass majority of things that they saw were not included. Or, there's a minimal amount that might be included. And then from there, we have all these additional costs that come into play. So that was kind of, what I wanted to talk about today with regards to just awareness of those things, and a number of things that I have helped clients walk and talk through, not just like through that initial building process, but then the after part, and how I've worked with my clients, whether we've finished basements together, we've done backsplashes together, we've of course, from a furnishing and decor standpoint as well. But there are a number of things up front, from builder to builder that the mass majority of people are not aware of. And so just kind of wanted to bring some enlightenment for that today. First and foremost, I would say one thing that a lot of people don't realize when you're walking in and chatting with the builder in a showroom or what have you, first thing that they'll do is they'll register you. So they'll take your information, ask you if you're working with a real estate agent or what have you. It's kind of important at that point in time to understand that the way that they register you kind of sticks for the longevity. So when you are, walking in to build a custom home or to do a production build, they do take the fact that you have walked in and, it might just be like a Sunday brunch, right? You're just, hey, let's just, something to do for the afternoon. Maybe we want to build a house in 6 to 12 months. But they do register you from, the time that you walk in, and that does carry whether you, decide to build today or 6 months or however that is that you register. So I usually tell people if you're not positive, about that process and or wanting to work with a representative, it might always be good to say, you know what, I don't know my real estate agent's name off the top of my head. I'll get that right back to you, kind of thing. Just to make sure that at the end of the day, if you do want representation later on, or if it's a process that you get serious about later, you're not negated the builder paying for that representation for you. That's something that a lot of people don't understand. I've had that happen to me personally, where I had a client that before her husband's relocation, they had walked into a Fisher home model on a Sunday after church. They were in town visiting with mom and dad. And then it was about 4 months later, the build or the relocation was solidified. And I knew the dad, and the dad was the one that had put me in touch with his daughter. And ironically, they ended up purchasing a spec home from Fisher, and they were still registered from months prior. And we had to have a little bit of an argument, if you will, with regards to me assisting them through that process. So just something to be aware of. But usually when you sit down with that particular representative, they're going to start walking and talking you through floor plans, of course. So having an idea of the floor plan that you would like to have, but the function piece of it. So in certain situations, maybe you can add on a bonus room, potentially add on a basement. There's a third car garage, there's extensions, there's a number of different things that you can do. And I'll kind of focus a little bit on the production side of it, because it's a little bit easier and a little less detailed, if you will, than going into like a semi-custom or a custom build, because there's less choices, when it comes to the production side of things. Did you guys build your house, Jill, or was it a resale?
No, I got it. It was probably built in 1998 and I bought it 2017. So it's 20 something years old. I wish I could afford to buy new.
Yeah.
Custom and beautiful. But I
Yeah.
mean, the good news or the bad news, I guess there was like some type of leak in the house. It was abandoned for 2 years. So they redid the whole house
Yeah.
on the inside. So I had everything new and basic, on the inside. So
Yeah.
like, so it was a fresh start with fresh everything. But again, not the highest end of things, but still perfect. So I like the inside is done. Really, it is. And the
Right.
outside,
Yeah.
could use some new siding and windows soon, but we just did a pool. So, but I wish I could buy new. I dream. I get these emails from this place called Grand Homes in
Mhm.
Texas. Because I worked in Dallas for a few years ago, and I'm just like, the architecture, the appliances, the cabinets, the ceilings,
Good.
I love it. I want to build a new home one day.
Yeah.
Maybe, you never
Yeah.
know.
Well,
Yeah.
and that's something that, I think is kind of funny, is that, I mean, because you were just talking about just and so when you walk into those model homes, that's exactly how they want you to feel. You walk
Yep.
in and they literally cram, for the most part, the max amount of
Mhm.
in there that they can. Of course, it's, furnished to the nines. And then there's additional things that they add in, from a designer standpoint. And the whole idea of it is to give you that warm and fuzzy feeling. And then what happens is you sit down and you start walking and talking through the wainscot that's in the foyer, or, the iron spindles that are on the staircase, a tray ceiling, in the master and stuff like that. And you quickly begin to realize that all that's not included.
Mhm.
Not in the price that you saw on the sign when you drove by and got excited about it. So,
Yeah.
those are things that I definitely want people to be aware of. And where do you need to kind of focus your attention when you do sit down and you start to put together that pricing. So, and it's so funny because there are certain things during that process that people don't realize are things that you would think right out of the gate that would be included. Things like ceiling fan rough-ins, for example, in bedrooms and things like that. I think Lennar's one of the builders that started to put like a can light as a complement or as part of the build during the process. But I mean, there for the longest time, there wasn't anything in those bedrooms. And if you do want a ceiling fan, like you have to pay for that. Not just that they won't put the fan in, but just, having, the rough in for that, or water softeners, for example. Not everybody includes, the ability to have the rough in for the water softener. So, a lot of the pretty things that you walk in and see, backsplash, hardware on your cabinetry, as I had mentioned, like the wainscoting or trim, crown molding. A number of those things are not things that are typically included up front, and they do cost you money at the end of the day. So I love to sit down with clients in those initial meetings, because my approach usually is, let's shove in everything that you want, all the pretty stuff. Let's get it all in there, but also keeping in mind the function part of it. Okay. By that, or things that you can or cannot change once we have walls in. Okay. So if you want to do a wet bar in a basement, for example, you want to make sure that you've got that plumbing roughed into the wall where you think you may want that bar to go later on, right? It's so much easier to do those things up front. Or if you want to add a bathroom later on, right? Having that rough in for that bathroom up front. I have some people who are really, particular about technology and things like that. So there's certain electrical things, or also being aware that there's certain things that builders will not do, when it comes to certain electrical or plumbing items, because it's not a part of their typical process. And they'll tell you that you have to do it after the home is built. So having an understanding of all of those things is, really key and important. And the mass majority of people don't understand that. And even when they sit down and start to go through all of those specifics, there's still a lot of questions that they may have that need to be answered. And so I tell a lot of people, yes, it's so fun and exciting to think about building a new home, but there's so many costs and things that go into it that people are not aware of. And a lot of times, some of the biggest things that I tend to work with people after the fact, I kind of just started to write a list here so that I wouldn't forget some of these things, because some of them are important and they really do begin to add up. And a lot of them are related to the pretty stuff and not necessarily just the overall function, if you will. Do you hear my dog growling in the background?
I do. I love it. I love it.
Like stalking a squirrel in my backyard.
Oh, I'm like, I thought he's excited. Mommy's talking, like, wants to be part of it.
She's just like growling underneath her breath here.
That's so funny.
So certain things like, your appliances, for example, we have started to see where like a refrigerator might be included, but that may not always be the case. Obviously, washer and dryer is never included. So those are some things. Water softeners are usually never included. So those are some things to be aware of appliance wise, but things like window treatments is huge. When you are putting in blinds or, fabric rolls or what have you for an entire home, that cost can be into the thousands of dollars if it's not something that you're doing yourself, or if you're not just keeping it, standard blinds, if you will. For the love of Jesus, don't do those plastic things. But so that as well as kitchen backsplash, hardware on all of your cabinetry. Of course, there are some things that you can pay a builder to do up front, but having an understanding of what makes sense from a financial standpoint to have them do, or can I get you a contractor afterwards to do it a little bit cheaper and more efficiently? We all tend to get those like little beveled mirrors in the powder bath and in your master bath and stuff. You don't get an option of putting in nice framed mirrors. Closets, those kind of wire racks that have like that, very generic builder grade, if you will. Those all tend to go in all your closets and your pantries. And your pantry, it's extremely annoying, right? Because you're like putting a can of food or a box of cereal on like those wire racks and it wants to topple over. And so I do tend to see people figuring out ways to be creative with those. They actually have now, I don't know if you've seen them, where it's like a wood board that you can put over the wire rack in your pantry or a closet space or whatever. And it actually makes it look like it's a shelf. It covers the whole wire rack.
Yeah.
And it looks really good. You'll have to Google that to see those, but I think it's, it's kind of like one of those things that somebody invented that I think is absolutely genius. That, and then, so ceiling fans, as I had mentioned, the rough-in, the company will do for you, but if you'd like those, we need to purchase those after the fact. Fencing, landscaping, landscaping in of itself. I always tell, so again, like talking about things that are worth the money. If you have the ability, if you're like in a community where it's low maintenance, they will likely have sod in the front and in the back, but the mass majority of them only do it in the front. And so then you've got seed in the back. And I will tell you, having built 2 homes and then put a pool in this home here last year, growing grass is like, and just forget it. Seriously, it is like the vein of my existence because I've done it for like the last 10 years. I don't want to ever have to grow grass again. So if you have the ability to, pay that additional to be able to have sod in the front and the back, it is, I feel, having gone through the process so many times. Yes, absolutely. Every time. So, being aware of that, fence, and then of course, if you're moving into a new home, whether you're upsizing or downsizing or whatever it is that you're doing, I don't know very many people who don't end up buying new furniture of some kind, whether it's the couch or a new bed set or, the dining set, things like that. So being aware of all of these, additional costs that come into play, bath towel bars or, things like that. So I usually tell people it's really good to sit down. We'll sit down, let's have a conversation and talk about the number of things. Once you have really dialed into the costs and the design aspects that are important for you in that initial pricing phase, then let's sit down and talk about the additional things that need to be done after the fact. And how we're going to accomplish those from a cost standpoint, or what's important for you in that first to 6 to 12 months. What can't we wait for? Do we have a dog? Do we have young kids? Do we need that fence to go in right away? I've worked with clients trying to, get in terms of like getting some hardscape put in, we want a grill outside or what have you. And just depending on times of year, good times to do those things. And, again, what's important, what needs to be done now, what can be done later. And all of those things really, do add up. One of the biggest things I tend to find that people spend money on in the first, I would say between 2 to 5 years, roughly, give or take, it kind of depends, is paint. So the paint that a builder will typically put in for you, they all use flat paint. And the reason for that is because you get flashing that happens. I'm going to let her outside so she will just go squirrel. But all builders will put in flat paint. And the reason for that is so that, because if they're going to do any kind of touch-ups or things like that, any paint that has any kind of sheen, eggshell, satin, doesn't matter. It's going to do what's called flashing. And so they'll use flat paint. So if they go in and they need to do some touch-ups from construction process or what have you, it's extremely easy and much less noticeable. They don't have to paint the whole wall. However, they don't tend to use a high grade paint. You can't wash it. And so, within that first couple of years, all the dings, dents, kids' fingerprints, all of those things on your walls, I usually tell people to budget that in. Sometime within 2 to 5 years of moving in, the mass majority of my design clients and real estate clients do tend to paint. May not be the whole house, maybe it be, certain areas of the home, but that's usually an expense that does come into play for sure. And sometimes if they don't have the ability to do like an upgraded carpet or things like that in the beginning, that's usually an expense that comes into play later on too. So, again, just kind of being aware of all of these things and working with, someone who has the ability to kind of guide you through those processes from a real estate perspective and from a design perspective even in a resale situation, when I have walked through with clients and, a lot of people say, I don't mind doing some updates or some improvements. But when you walk into a home and, the bathroom needs to be gutted or the kitchen needs to be gutted, or you have an unfinished basement that you want to finish, what do those costs realistically look like? And what is your taste in order to achieve the look that you want? How do you make it cohesive with the home? Because as we've talked about before, you start to remodel one room and all of a sudden you've got half a dozen projects going in your mind.
So true. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Just remind us how we can reach you. We still have 5 minutes left, but I would love to just remind people how we contact you.
Sure. So my website is www.kristinanninteriordesign.com, and that's Kristin with 2 I's. And the best number to get a hold of me is 317-376-3351.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. I just want to make sure we're covering everything on your list, but we're on a roll here. What else do we have?
So I would say first and foremost, for the most part, anytime that you go into anything in life, right, when you're trying to, do anything with your home, aside from, the aesthetics and the things that you want, money's always a factor. And so I always tell people, regardless if it's a design project or, purchasing a home, having the numbers first is truly key, because having an understanding of what that looks like for you when you're walking into that process, whether you're kind of just brushing the surface of it or you are going into it with intention, having a conversation with your spouse or your partner and chatting with a mortgage lender or having a conversation with the bank about what a home equity line of credit looks like so that you can have the funds to do that project at home. And then chat with the professional that's going to guide you through that process, whatever that might be. Doing that legwork up front before you dive in and get all excited and potentially disappointed is usually one of the first things that I recommend for people to do. So I think that that's key for sure.
Oh, well, by the way, let's just point out, you work strictly in Indiana, or do you also do virtual work for clients all over the U.S.?
So yes, I am located in central Indiana, Indianapolis area, Carmel, Fishers, Noblesville, Westfield. I do have the ability from a real estate perspective. I've done this. My brokerage, which is Compass, has agents that are all over the country. There's over 30,000 of us or so. And so I have the ability to tap into that network and help people from a relocation standpoint. And from a design perspective, it really kind of just depends on what the project is that they may be looking to do. There are certain things where I do truly feel like in order to provide the best service that I can, I need to be physically there. And that usually pertains to, larger remodel projects, if you will. I just had a gal I was chatting with. She lives about 2.5 hours away from here, and she's going through a number of different projects on her home, in her home. And we talked about what that looks like from a remote perspective. And so we may be working on some things there, but I will just say that, when it comes to remodel projects in particular, because there's so many phases that go into that, sometimes it can be a little bit challenging to work on that from a remote perspective. So that really is a case-by-case basis for sure.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you so much. If we do
You're
want to reach
welcome.
out, Kristin, remind us one more time how we can find you.
Sure. So, and I am on social media as well. Usually I just tell people, Google my name.
It's so easy, right? KristinBergunder.
There you go. Yeah. That's one thing about my profession is I cannot be a secret agent, where I'm like hidden behind the sheets. Everything's everywhere. So.
Well, thank you again for the conversation today. Looking forward to, are we back on next week as well?
Yes.
Yay. All right.
Yay.
I'm sure you'll have something new and exciting, but just curious. I see the subway tile behind you.
Yeah.
What do you have on top of the stove? What type of tile is that? Like in a square, a rectangle?
Yeah. So it's
pretty.
actually called a picket tile. And so there's a frame around it. Let's see if I can.
Oh my goodness.
I
love that.
So it's like a picket tile. There's like some earth tones and stuff like
Beautiful.
that we did. But yeah, I just kept it with a simple subway because I just kind of feel like a subway tile is timeless. I usually tell people though, if you're going to do a subway tile, the best thing to do, in my personal opinion, is to do a larger subway. So like a 3x12, 4x12, because the typical 3x5, you're going to have a lot more grout lines and it's going to be a lot busier. So just kind of depending on the space, if you want to elongate it and kind of pull it out, there's so many fun things that you can do with these frame pieces underneath
it looks great.
So
thank you so much. I love your kitchen. I'm jealous. All right, one day I'll have it too. Have a great day to all of our listeners. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.